Hey everybody, it's Bruce here with Traveling with Bruce. Welcome to my channel today. Today's date is June the 6th, 2020, and news coming out today in the cruise world has to do with Royal Caribbean and with MSC. Both companies are making announcements today. Their PR departments are working hard to put the positive spin on the news that's coming out, but it might not be good. It might just be reality. Anyway, thank you for joining me here at Traveling with Bruce. Thank you for subscribing to my channel, giving my video updates thumbs ups, and sending me comments on what you think and what you're hearing out there. Also, thanks for following me on Facebook, the Facebook group page for Traveling with Bruce, growing leaps and bounds. Come on over there and join us between these shows and these updates. And also, thanks for following me on Instagram. Those of you who are supporting TWB by picking up some COVID masks or TWB T-Shirts or coffee mugs, thank you for all that. Head to RedBubble. The link is down below in the description. I appreciate it. And also, consider joining my channel as a sponsor member. Hit the join button and join me Monday night, 7 o'clock, for the sponsor member hangout show. 1 hour where it's just you and me, and you can ask me anything you want. 8 o'clock is the regular time for our live shows on Mondays, but 7 o'clock Eastern time is the hangout show just for sponsor members. So join us there and let's have some fun. All right, let's get into the news of the day here. Royal Caribbean and MSC, both companies made announcements. As far as Royal Caribbean is concerned, what they announced today is what I was expecting. I've been expecting this now for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. A few weeks ago, I did a video and an update on how Royal Caribbean was doing financially. And in that video, I talked about how much cash they had on hand, how much they had in deposits. But I also happened to mention that the company has 2 debt offerings that are maturing that they have to pay off. One of them is for 2020. It's a $400 million debt offering, and another one is $900 million, which is due in 2021. So that's $1.3 billion that the company has got to get their hands on to replace, in other words, get new debt to replace the old debt. The problem is, or the reality is, of course, the company is not generating any income right now. It has no sailings going on. Their interest rate that they were paying for these older notes versus the interest rate they're going to pay, there'll be a difference. It'll be much higher. And so the cost of staying alive for Royal Caribbean will rise. But the carrot on the end of the stick for Royal Caribbean is simple. They're trying to raise right now $2 billion in fresh cash using debt instruments like notes and bonds. And they're going to use probably $400 million of this $2 billion to pay off the old debt that's due this year, pay for their fees to their brokers and bankers, and they'll end up with maybe $1.25 billion in the bank for now, cash on hand. $900 million of this will be needed later for the debt in 2021, unless they can raise more cash later this year. And the street in Wall Street has been expecting Royal Caribbean to want to raise at least $3 billion this year, not another $2 billion, but $3 because that last billion was actually going to take care of the $900 million for 2021. That would then mean the company is actually raising fresh cash of about $1.25 billion, and at a burn rate of $275 million a month, we're talking about 5 months of life. That's just 5 more months. On top of the money they have now, this will take the company probably to the end of 2021 into early 2022 without any cash coming in. Now, I did read this morning on the limited information that was provided by Royal Caribbean that what they've done is they have created a new subsidiary company. They've taken 7 of their cruise ships that they own and rolled them into a subsidiary company that is owned by Royal Caribbean itself. And it's this new entity that is borrowing the $2 billion. 7 cruise ships have been rolled in to this subsidiary company as assets, and now they're going to borrow $2 billion against those ships to, in effect, then roll money into the mother company and pay down debt and keep the company alive. So the Royal Caribbean is very active. Its accountants are active. Its bankers are active. its financial advisors very active to come up with ways to continually raise cash, even though zero cash is coming through the front door right now. We don't expect, I personally do not expect cruising to start for Royal Caribbean for the remainder of this year. They are bravely talking about August 1-ish, but we do know that in the last 48 hours, they have admitted that for the remainder of 2020, there'll be no cruises in Alaska, so that means nothing out of Seattle or Vancouver, British Columbia. They've also announced no cruises to New England and Canada because Canada has shut down. So that stops cruising out of Boston, stops most cruises out of New York. The only area left for this company to try to get cruising going is the Caribbean, and this is up to the CDC to decide what the new normal will be. We have heard that the company believes they can make money at between 30 and 50% occupancy on these ships, so that if the CDC restricts how many passengers can be on the ship at any one time, they feel they can weather the storm and make money. So, like all other cruise lines, Royal Caribbean is up against it. They've got to wait it out here to get through the shutdown. Unfortunately, for the cruise lines that operate out of Florida and operate out of Galveston, we've got a problem. Houston, we got a problem. And the problem is the cases of the virus are accelerating and growing in southern states because the southern states were reluctant to do the shutdown similar to what New York did and New Jersey, where the numbers in Northeast U.S. are dropping and new infection rates are dropping. They're accelerating in the south. And this is a problem for any passenger coming in to these states to go on a cruise and returning. If you're getting off a cruise ship and you're getting off in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Port Canaveral, it is possible that when you return home to where you come from, and I'm talking about other countries, you might be subject to a 14-day quarantine because of the lax restrictions that were in place in these jurisdictions. I'm just throwing out the scenarios that could be happening here, and this could delay cruising out of Florida and out of the USA in general overall. I can't say it will, but it could, and so take that with a grain of salt. We'll see what happens. All right, the second story today, MSC. The company tried to put a positive spin on a sad story. The reality is this. MSC has now announced that they won't be cruising until August of this year. They've extended their shutdown by a couple of additional months. No surprise there. Everyone else has done it. But what they buried in their press release was that they are abandoning Miami for the Seaside. Their big new ship that they launched 2.5 years ago with great fanfare, billion-dollar build-out. The MSC Seaside is leaving Miami and heading to Genoa in Italy, which leaves Miami only with the Meraviglia and the Armonia. Now, the Armonia is a 20-something-year-old ship that was supposed to go to Tampa and sail out of Tampa for the next couple of years on 3- and 4-night cheap cruises. Because they're pulling the Seaside out of Miami and taking it back to Europe, the Armonia is being shifted from Tampa to Miami, which leaves Miami only with 2 ships. They're taking the Devina, which was a Miami ship, moving it up to Port Canaveral, and they're going to offer 3-, 4-, and 7-day cruises up there. Now, why would they do this? Why would you abandon Miami or pull back on Miami sailings? And the answer, to me, if I'm going to take the pessimistic view, the Debbie Downer view, to me the answer is the cruise line is worried that if they have all their eggs in one basket, in other words, all their ships home port out of Miami, and Miami becomes a cluster for the virus because all of these other cruise lines are using Miami as a heavy-duty home port. I mean, on a typical day, there are 6 to 8 cruise ships in port. If you've got all your ships out of that home port and that home port shuts down or has an outbreak, you're done for. Now you can't get your ships to go anywhere because these other ports have already reserved out their port space. There's limited places to go. And so by having a cruise work out of Port Canaveral, you at least got one of your ships coming in and out of there. So if Miami gets shut down, well, at least you're still operating over there. Well, perhaps, maybe not, but perhaps you can get a second ship into Port Canaveral because you're already a customer of Port Canaveral. I'm just speculating. I could be blowing hot air here. But it's obvious to me what's happening with MSC. They're pulling out of they're pulling a ship out of Miami that's capable of handling over 4,000 passengers a week, taking it back to Europe. They're keeping their old Armonia ship, which has very few balconies, and taking it from Tampa to Miami, and they're now down to 3 ships in America. So this is a pullback. No matter how they want to dress it up, it is what it is. I have a feeling the CDC is going to make it so restrictive that MSC is reading between the lines and going, hey, let's just get the hell out of here for a while. Why don't we take a year off or more out of the U.S. with one of our top ships and move it to Europe, where perhaps it'll be more friendly. Obviously, going to Genoa means Italy. There are cruises that are going to be going out of Hamburg and other European ports. MSC dominates Europe, has for quite a while now. It's the number 1 cruise line there, and America is being basically just being pulled back. They're just cutting it back. They are talking about doing these 3 and 4 day sailings, and they're talking a lot about their new private island in the Bahamas, that Ocean Cay Reservoir Reserve that they have, the MSC Island. Makes sense to me, because if you're going to operate a 3-day or a 4-day cruise, you might leave a port out of Florida, have a full sea day or so, then have a full day on the island, another sea day, and then you're back, or 2 sea days and you're back. They won't have to go to other ports of call other than their own private island, and that will hopefully satisfy the CDC for potential exposure risks from other countries, which means that they won't go to the Dominican Republic, they won't sail to Jamaica, they won't sail to maybe St. Kitts or other areas. They'll simply stay in the Caribbean within a day's sail of a home port or so, and visit their private island only on some of these shorter cruises. On their longer cruises, it looks to me like avoiding Tampa means they're saying goodbye to Mexico. They might not sail to Mexico at all. They'll simply do the Eastern Caribbean, perhaps some of the Western Caribbean, but not Mexico, because again, we're seeing fewer 7-day cruises going forward being offered. The other note that I will talk about, the other piece of information, is they are talking about not returning to full service until the summer of 2021. They've out and out said it in this press release. Again, it's buried deep in the 4th paragraph. They've talked about a limited return to cruising when allowed to do so, and they do not anticipate being back at full sailing capacity until the summer of 2021. So the reality here is MSC will be out of business in full force from February, March of 2020, this year, all the way to next year, June, which is a year and a quarter. It's a privately held company working out of Switzerland. They do not have to report their financials to Wall Street executives or bankers. They do not have to go public with this information as to how they're doing financially, and they are backed by the MSC Container Ship Corporation, the second largest mover of container ships in the world, and so as a private concern, they keep their cards close to their chest. But watching what MSC does tells me, watch for what Norwegian will do, what Royal Caribbean will do, what Carnival and all of their brands will do. You can see how these brands are still pulling back rather than going forward to expand, and they're cutting back now. I can see the cutting back of U.S. ports of call. Now, will this make a big difference to the world of cruising if one ship leaves Miami? No, but it's an indication that MSC has reversed course on America. They are backing off right now for the foreseeable future to the USA. We've all had our comments, good and bad, about MSC Seaside. Some folks love MSC, some folks don't. Others are neutral about it. But this tells me, an observer from the outside, that a European player has had enough and knows going forward for at least the next year or so, America is not in their plans for expansion. So they're not talking about going to Los Angeles. They're not talking about home porting out of New York. They're not going to home port out of the Gulf. they're backing off. Will they eventually come back to North America but go to Barbados instead and home port out of there, or home port out of Dominican Republic rather than the U.S.? Maybe. But we'll wait and see what happens on that. Anyway, there's a lot of speculation for you on what's going on with MSC. Again, these are all my personal opinions. Like them, hate them, don't care. It's all good with me. Let me know what your thoughts are. Thanks for watching me today, listening to me today. Again, on the news on Royal Caribbean raising another $2 billion to stay alive, and MSC pulling back from the USA. Thank you again for all your support. Please stay warm, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll talk to you later, everybody. Bye for now.